Harbor Creek, Wisconsin, wore summer like it had earned it. The air was warm without being aggressive, sunlight bouncing off Lake Bellevue just a few blocks away. Cape Cod-style homes lined the streets near downtown, painted soft blues, creams, and grays, each with trimmed hedges, porch swings, and lawn chairs that suggested long conversations and short naps. Pickup trucks shared curb space with electric sedans. American flags hung politely, not loudly. It was Saturday afternoon, which in Harbor Creek meant one thing above all others: ice cream. Mason Reed, 37, civil engineer, recently divorced, and aggressively trying to enjoy the little things, stood in line outside Lakeside Scoops, holding a waffle cone wrapped in a napkin like it was fragile cargo. He wore khaki shorts, a faded navy t-shirt from a local 10K run he never trained properly for, and boat shoes he'd owned for years but never actually worn on a boat. Behind him, families chatted. Kids tugged on parents' arms. A radio inside the shop played soft classic rock. The smell of sugar and lake water mixed into something that felt exactly like childhood, even if Mason wasn't sure he remembered his own all that fondly. Mason ordered vanilla bean with rainbow sprinkles, a choice he defended to no one and everyone. "Classic," said Ruth Callahan, the teenage cashier, handing it over. "Respect." Mason smiled. "I'm in my simple pleasures era." Cone in hand, Mason stepped out onto the sidewalk, sunlight catching the melting edges immediately. He adjusted his grip, napkin slipping slightly. That was the moment fate cleared its throat. A seagull, ambitious, uninvited, and morally flexible, swooped low. Mason flinched. His foot caught a slight slope in the sidewalk near the curb. Not a crack. Worse, a slope that felt intentional. Like the town had quietly decided, let's see what happens. Mason stumbled. The cone tilted. Time slowed. The scoop slid. And with devastating grace, the vanilla, pristine, expensive, hopeful, launched itself from the cone and landed directly on the pavement, sprinkles scattering like confetti after a bad parade. Silence. A child gasped. Someone whispered, "Oh no." Mason stared at the fallen ice cream, cone still in his hand, frozen in a posture that suggested denial might reverse physics. "Well," he said softly, "that's on me." Laughter bubbled from the line behind him, gentle, sympathetic, communal. Harbor Creek laughed the way families do when someone trips over a story they'll tell later. Mason bent down instinctively, as if he could salvage something, then stopped himself. "That's not how bacteria works," he muttered. He straightened, wiped his hands on his shorts, and exhaled. That's when Caleb Thompson stepped forward. Caleb was 7, freckled, wearing light-up sneakers and holding a chocolate cone that was already losing structural integrity. He looked up at Mason with the serious expression of someone about to make a very important offer. "Mister," Caleb said, "you can have a bite of mine." His mother, Angela Thompson, froze. "Caleb." "It's okay," Caleb insisted. "Ice cream falls feels sad." The crowd melted. Mason blinked, caught off guard. He crouched slightly to Caleb's level. "That's incredibly kind of you," Mason said. "But I think your ice cream needs you more than I do." Caleb thought about this. "Okay, but you can watch me eat it so it's still happy." Mason laughed, a real one. The kind that surprised him. Angela smiled apologetically. "He's very empathetic." "You're raising him right," Mason said. Ruth Callahan leaned out the window. "Hey, Mason, right? Hold on." She disappeared inside. Moments later, she returned with a fresh cone. "On the house," she said. "Gravity discount." Applause broke out. Actual applause. Mason accepted the cone, cheeks warm, heart lighter than it had been all week. "Thank you," he said. "I'll walk slower this time." Caleb nodded solemnly. "That's the trick." Mason stepped away from the shop, new cone in hand, glancing back at the small crowd, neighbors, kids, strangers, all smiling at something that could have been embarrassing but somehow wasn't. The ice cream dripped slightly. Mason caught it before it fell again. Lesson 1 learned. Mason walked toward the lake path, ice cream intact, shoes sticking slightly to the pavement where sugar had fallen earlier. The afternoon stretched out ahead of him, wide and forgiving. He sat on a bench overlooking the water, watching boats drift lazily. Kids skipped stones. A couple argued quietly about sunscreen application. Life continued at an unhurried pace. The ice cream tasted better than it should have. Maybe because it wasn't just dessert anymore. Over the next few days, Mason found himself thinking about Caleb, about how easily kindness had come to him. No hesitation, no embarrassment, just a simple response to someone else's disappointment. Mason started noticing other things too. Neighbors waving longer. Cashiers asking how his day was. Actually listening. Kids holding doors. People laughing at mistakes instead of shrinking from them. The following Saturday, Mason returned to Lakeside Scoops. This time, he ordered 2 cones. He spotted Caleb and Angela near the dock. Mason walked over and handed Caleb one. For balance, Mason said. In case gravity strikes again. Caleb beamed. You remembered me. Hard to forget a life lesson served in sprinkles. They sat together, talking about boats, favorite flavors, and why seagulls couldn't be trusted. As the sun dipped lower, Mason realized something simple and grounding. Not every fall is a failure. Some are invitations. And sometimes, the smallest people remind you how to stand back up with grace, and maybe a new cone. The narrator, watching Harbor Creek glow in the evening light, might add, life doesn't always hand you what you ordered. But sometimes, it hands you something better, a reminder that joy is lighter when shared, and recovery can be sweet. When Mason Reed drops his ice cream in front of a crowd, embarrassment feels inevitable, until a local kid offers kindness instead of pity. What starts as a messy moment turns into a reminder that joy, humor, and recovery often come from unexpected places. In a small town where people still notice one another, a fallen scoop becomes a lesson in grace, generosity, and moving forward with a smile.
Daily happiness and motivation is hidden in. Like and subscribe.